Have you ever tried to help someone and it just felt like you were making things more complicated? Our first instinct is usually to jump in and try to fix things, right? But what if the best way to help is something else entirely? Okay, let's dive into this fascinating shift in perspective.
So let's just get right to it. What does it really mean to help someone? Is it about, jumping in with advice, solving the problem for them? Or is there something deeper? Something that actually empowers them instead of just, slapping a Band-Aid on it? This is the central question we're exploring today.
To really get what we're talking about, there's this fantastic story from a guy named Dr. Curtis Peterson that just perfectly captures this whole idea. And it all starts in a pretty wild place, Yellowstone National Park.
Okay, so picture this. You're deep in Yellowstone on one of those rugged roads where there's only one way in and one way out. All of a sudden, this crazy microburst of wind just tears through, and bam, a massive pine tree comes crashing down, totally blocking the path. You are stuck. And we're not talking about a little branch here. This thing is an absolute monster. It's not going anywhere. So pretty quickly, a bunch of smart, capable people gather around. You've got an engineer, a construction worker, a teacher, all of them trying to figure this out. They've got some tools, a car jack, some rope, but they're basically just trying to use brute force to move this gigantic tree. And well, despite all that brain power, the tree is winning. It is not budging, not an inch. And then, out of nowhere, something weird happens. The tree moves. Just a tiny bit. Everybody's looking around like, what was that? And that's when they see him. It's this young kid, maybe 11, 12 years old. And he's not even near the heavy part of the trunk. He's way down at the other end, lifting the very, very tip of the tree. And that right there, that's the turning point. That one small, simple action creates this massive aha moment for the whole group. Suddenly, they get it. They don't have to lift the whole tree. They can use leverage. By lifting that light little tip, they can pivot the entire thing like a giant pendulum. So working together, that's exactly what they do. And just like that, they roll it right off the road. Problem solved. Now, obviously, that story isn't really about moving trees, right? It's about something much bigger. It's about a fundamental shift in how we think about our role when we try to help someone. It's about shifting from being a fixer to something else. We're going to call it the art of facilitation. Think about it like this. On one side, you have the fixer. That's the person trying to lift the heaviest part of the tree all by themselves. They want to be the hero, right? They want to solve the entire problem. But on the other side, you've got the facilitator. That's the kid. He didn't try to be the hero. He just lifted the tip. He found the leverage point and showed everyone else how they could solve the problem together. And this really gets us to the core definition here. Facilitation, it's not about changing people. It's the art of empowering them with the knowledge and the tools they need so that they can change themselves if they choose to. See the difference? You're not moving the tree for them. You're just showing them where to push. Okay, so if you want to be a good facilitator, you can't just wing it. You actually need a kind of toolkit for understanding the ridiculously complex landscape of the human mind. So let's look at a few of the big ideas that really shape this kind of work. All right, first up, let's go way back to an idea from Sigmund Freud. He had this great analogy for the mind, an iceberg. What we see, our conscious thoughts and feelings, that's just the tip, maybe 10% of the whole thing sticking out of the water. But the other 90%, the huge, powerful part, that's our unconscious mind, lurking beneath the surface. And a lot of the time, that's what's really driving our behaviors, our problems, and our patterns. Okay, so that's one idea. Now let's jump to a totally different perspective from the humanist psychologist Carl Rogers. He talked about our two selves. See, there's the ideal self. That's the person we think we should be. And then there's our real self, who we actually are, with all our flaws and quirks. Rogers basically said that a ton of our anxiety and sadness comes from the size of the gap between those two. So helping someone often means helping them close that gap by learning to accept their real self. So, building on those foundational ideas, today's helpers have a whole toolbox of specific techniques. You've probably heard of some of them, like cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, and narrative therapy. Let's just quickly touch on what a couple of these actually do. So let's take CBT. It's a really practical approach, and it's built on a pretty simple idea. Our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are all connected. So the goal with CBT is to help people learn how to spot those unhelpful, negative thought patterns that are holding them back, challenge them, and then, little by little, replace them with healthier ones. Narrative therapy, on the other hand, comes at it from a different angle. It's all about the idea that we are the stories we tell about ourselves. And when we get stuck, it's usually because our personal story has been hijacked by the problem. So this approach helps people separate their identity from the problem. You have a problem, you are not the problem, and helps them start writing a new, more empowering story for themselves. Okay, so we've got the big picture philosophy, we've got some of the theory, but how does this actually work in practice? Let's break down the core skills that, honestly, anyone can use to become a better facilitator for the people in their own life. It really boils down to this simple but super powerful three-step process. Step one, and this is the most important one by far, is exploration. This is all about listening. I mean, really listening without judgment. Only after you've done that can you move to step two, which is insight, where you help the person start to see patterns. And then finally, you get to step three, action, where you work together on a plan for change. The key thing to remember is you can't just skip to action. It doesn't work. And this quote right here, it just perfectly explains why that first step, exploration, is so absolutely critical. See, in the beginning, the actual objective facts of a situation are not nearly as important as how the person has structured and internalized the problem in their own mind. You have to understand their internal world before you can even think about offering any meaningful help. And get this, here's a mind-blowing little fact that shows just how powerful listening really is. Research shows that after you ask someone a question, a helper should wait at least 20 seconds for an answer. 20 seconds! I mean, in a normal conversation, that feels like an eternity, right? But that's how long it can take for someone to get past the easy, surface-level answer and find something truly meaningful. That's the power of strategic silence. It's incredible. So let's bring all of this back to you. Think about your own life, your relationships, with your partner, your kids, your friends, your coworkers. Where are you trying to be the hero? Where are you grabbing the heaviest part of the tree, trying to fix everything yourself? And where instead could you maybe step back, find that little leverage point, and start being the facilitator who empowers everyone to move forward together?